Share screen. Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, I just wanted to welcome everybody to the Michigan Note Investor Forum. We want to just make a note that this is a new time. Actually, it was at 7 p.m. and now it's at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, second Monday of the month. So please mark your calendars. What we want to talk about tonight are workouts, and we're very excited to have dear friends, seasoned note investor, another husband and wife team, Levi and Jenny Rudder. And Levi and Jenny, we met them probably back in 2000 and maybe 19 or maybe somewhere around there when we early on, 18 or 19. And we were at different masterminds together. I think we were another one in Arizona that I remember that we got to have lunch together. So it's nice to connect with some Texans. I know Phil's from Texas, so it's nice to have you guys. And we're really excited to hear from you tonight. You guys have been working in real estate. I'm not sure I understand.
Oops.
Oh, you guys have been working in real estate a long time. And I know you have some stories to share, but most recently, probably the exits that you've had to be creative with. So without further ado, maybe you can get their picture over here so I can see them on there. We'll give you this. We're in a small group, so can you pull it over? It's all right. So let's have you guys just start off with, tell us how you got started in notes, and maybe what in your real estate career led you to notes.
We have had a really rocky, bumpy, twisted path in real estate. We've been kind of bounced all around. I think especially towards the beginning, every time we went to a different networking event or a mastermind, we saw shiny objects and we chased them. And so that took up the first few years of us just chasing every shiny object, trying to figure out what we thought was fun. We quickly realized that we are not the best ones to pick paint colors and do interior design and that sort of thing. So flips, like retail flips, were out of the question for us. We did finally land on notes because, at least for me primarily, it was more of an analytical choice. I didn't have to worry about the emotion or the design aspects of it. I didn't have to decide if it was pretty or anything. I just looked at the numbers and developed this sort of pattern of yes, no to be able to analyze them. He took my rules for yes, no and threw them out the window. So
yeah, like we were talking earlier about, I create the chaos and Jenny has to fix everything and organize it. For me, notes took me out of my comfort zone. I was always most comfortable working in our own backyard. We had a water well service business. So I was used to being hands-on, driving to properties, stuff like that. And the notes, I thought, would force me to utilize our network and other people rather than just what we could do with our own two hands.
So would you say that you were business owners and then like entrepreneurial, and then you got into real estate and then you got into notes? Like what was the first, second, and third?
So we were business owners, had a family water well business that my dad and granddad started in 1973. Took it over, had trouble with employees and doing quality work. We started investing in real estate, our first purchase, and we still have it as a commercial warehouse space with office, a little bit office space in it. It's just a regular rental, and it just comes in like clockwork.
Right.
They take care of the small maintenance stuff. Then we did a little bit of owner financing. Lubbock is a little bit of a odd market because it didn't get hit by the bubble in 2008. And people wanted to live in a real nice, fancy 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage place, and they wanted to pay pretty much what Zillow says your monthly payment would be on a mortgage, and they didn't understand the cost of money and what they could afford. They'd want something real nice for $600 a month. So we decided to go into the note space after we understood loans, and then focused on non-performing, just so we'd know how to work a non-performing note regardless if we bought performing or non-performing.
Nice. Yeah, non-performing is how we started, and that sort of teaches you everything.
Yeah.
Trial by fire.
It teaches you everything. That's great. I love hearing those stories because we all have a unique start to the note business. And who was more eager? Was it Jenny that was more eager, or you, Levi?
It was me.
Okay.
I was on my corporate ladder. I was working a day job doing engineering work, going for my professional license, on my path. And then
Here, come with me.
he decides to quit all of his jobs and be like, hey, let's go try this totally new thing. Come. And
That's common. Okay.
Yeah.
So Jenny, was it like, I'll give you 2 years, or like, okay, I'm going for it, or how did you come to a point where you're like, let's do it?
well, at first, I didn't really expect it to be a full-time thing, because when we first started with commercial rentals, I had been familiar with them for years, and it was fairly passive. You really didn't have to mess with the commercial tenants very often. They just wanted to be left alone. They signed longer leases. And so I thought we would keep doing other things and invest on the side. And then the more we got into it, it wasn't very many months into it, we started building up this travel schedule of all the networking events and the seminars and everything. And I went to my bosses at my work. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I need to take a month off. And I had this whole list of days, of weekends that I needed to take off. And they just kind of snarled at me and were like, what are you doing? You can't keep doing this. And so it was a combination of, it was hard to do both. Like if we were going to do it right, we needed to go to these events and interact. And at the same time, our business was just starting. So we didn't have enough assets to really rationalize it full time. And it was this just really awkward stage until we finally sat down and were like, are we going to do this or not? And kind of had to decide, okay, we're going to actually put full effort into it. And in order to do that, we have to quit our other engagements and just go full force on it. So
is that where the Note Rehabber logo and name was born, when you went full force? Or did that come eventually?
So we like the non-performing space. So instead of rehabbing houses, we rehab notes, rehab borrowers, and I forgot who said it or how we came about it, but it's like, ooh, that's pretty catchy, and
Like it.
we just decided to go with it.
And a big part of it, I think, came from our owner financing stint, because we thought we were selling houses. And so that's how we treated it for the first while, is we bought a house and we hammered nails and we fixed holes in the drywall, and then we sold a house. And it took me a while to realize we were not selling houses. We were educating people about financial literacy. We were teaching them how interest payments work. We were teaching them how to budget for maintenance and repairs. We had nothing to do with the house. We could sell them any house, totally broken down or totally fixed up. And we still had to address the fact of teaching the borrowers what to do. If we bought the paper, we had to fix clerical errors and title issues and bankruptcies and whatever else came muddled up with it. It's like we weren't doing real estate, we were doing paperwork and human services and
Yes.
and all these other things.
Yes. Wow, that's a really good example, because, especially originating notes is something I think we could have a whole session on. And Phil and I have done a couple originations, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hand holding, and there has to be a virtual assistant out there for some of this. So I'd be interested to continue this, talking about that eventually as we think about notes in general. Now, you buy non-performing notes, so you hope that your owner finance notes don't become non-performing. So ideally, you wouldn't expect that to happen if you created your own note, but it does happen, I guess. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I guess, with the market shifting and COVID, how has that impacted your business and just your strategy? And then we'll get into some of the creative exits that you've had to use during,
So for me, at least, we've had some, we have a couple notes, one in Mississippi, one in New Jersey, that the people have been able to stay in the house a long time. But surprisingly, through COVID, we've had a lot of payoffs, and we've had people that missed just briefly and then they started paying again. And for the most part, we were very steady on our stuff that we got reperforming, that we bought, whether it's performing or not. Most of the people continued to pay. The two that have been able to stay in there for so long, we knew they were problems. One of them was purchased intending on taking the house back. The other one was hoping to get the person reperforming, but when she decided she wouldn't pay for a few months over November, December, January of 19, we started the foreclosure process, and then she's supposed to be out in October of 19, then contested the foreclosure and stuff, and then we almost had possession of the house, and then COVID hit. And that just shut everything down. And hopefully in the next couple weeks, we'll be getting possession of it. That's one of the creative workout examples I was going to give. And I'll just go ahead and say what it is. At least in Mississippi, in Hinds County, any law enforcement personnel can do an eviction. So you don't have to wait for the constable or the sheriff. And we have someone that will do the eviction process. We pay them whatever they say they'll do it for, and then we'll hire a crew to remove the people's personal effects and change locks.
Yeah, I know that's interesting because each state has its own rules and regulation. Now, does it matter if it's a land contract or a mortgage note? Is it vary with depending on what kind of paper it is, or?
A lot of the CFDs, they are different, definitely. But a lot of the times when you get the older CFDs, they end up getting treated the same anyways. Because the law, it starts getting gray, and like you said, it depends on every state, but once somebody has a certain amount of equity or they've been paying on it a certain amount of time, the law really doesn't like you actually enforcing the contract as it's stated. And so you have to go through the same eviction process.
Yeah, I don't know that.
In Ohio, right? For sure, that's like if you have 25% down on the mortgage note, then even though it's a land contract or a CFD, you still have to go through the same legal proceedings as a mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Texas, it can't be more, you can't delay transfer of the title more than 180 days. So different states vary quite a bit. I think the time that the CFD was extremely versatile and easy is come and gone. Most of the states are aware of them and have some kind of law on the books that make them kind of prohibitively hard to comply with the laws without subjecting yourself to some punitive consequences.
Right.
We started off.
Do you have any Michigan notes?
No.
You were buying in Michigan? Stayed away from this great state. Okay.
Hey, what has been your one biggest surprise in the note industry?
How unprofessional professionals are. I thought when we moved from rehabbing to notes, it would be so much better because we're constantly irritated with contractors, doing shoddy work, not doing what they're supposed to. So we looked at the note space and said, hey, we're going to be dealing with lawyers and professional servicers, and this is going to be great. No. So that has been an unexpected grief for sure, is that you still have to stay on top of all of your vendors no matter what industry they're in.
Right.
Yeah. I know for us, one big surprise is how capital intensive the note business is. Because you not only have your capital you put in to purchase the note, but then you got capital that you need to put in for lawyers, et cetera, to
Holding costs.
holding costs to actually get the note reperforming and then off and away until you sell it.
Or our longest note, which is actually going to be a premiere on YouTube. I've never done a premiere before, but I thought, okay, I'll do it a premiere at 8:50 on our Monday night. But I just recorded a case study on our longest mortgage note, non-performing workout. And it's about a 10-minute video, and it's part 2 of the video because you can go back and listen to part 1, and it was like, I was so hopeful and so positive.
Yeah.
And literally 2.5 years later, we're resolved, we've worked it all out. And luckily the housing market boom was in our favor. So when we sold the house, it didn't take long to sell, and we made some money. We didn't make, it wasn't like a huge, huge return, but we did make money. But it was more about the lessons learned. So
Well, and when
you guys have some of those lessons learned or things that you could share.
I love that you have the comparison video. That's awesome to have the forethought or the coincidence, whichever it may be,
Yes.
to actually put your thoughts and your emotions on the asset early, because they do change so much over the months. So.
Yes.
Michael, were you asking a question?
Yeah, there's a couple ones I had. The first one, when you're looking at your non-performing notes, are you mainly looking for, is your sole factor yield, or are you looking at the payment history that the person has? What do you focus in on when you're looking? Because a non-performing note, it really takes a lot to kind of evaluate it.
So personally, when I'm looking at a non-performing, there's two categories. There's one where I hope they start paying again. And then there's one where I hope they don't, because it's a good enough asset and we're buying it at a big enough discount that I'd rather take it to foreclosure. On those, typically there hasn't been a payment made in a really long time. And
like a year plus for us is what really long.
Yeah, 18 to 20. If it's over 18 months of no payments received, the odds of getting them reperforming, we don't think are very high. If this one we have in New Jersey that we bought intending to take the house back, they have been in a non-performing status for about 12 years. And with the buying it at about 50 cents of on the dollar of the as-is value, it was purchased as an REO, more so. We're still working to get the occupant out. And COVID's kind of hindered that, even though we have the order granting us possession. And then we've bought some that started performing month one, but looking at the payment history, we'll always look at the payment history, because if there haven't been anything received and you don't just absolutely want that house or whatever the collateral is, then you should just ignore that, in my opinion, as a prospect.
But with some of the non-performing notes you're looking at, you don't have access for view of the inside of the home,
Right.
like when you're rehabbing. So how are you able to evaluate, what a new SEV, what do you think comparable values were of the home? Especially with somebody that might not have been paying for 12 years or so. So
that one in particular, I contacted the realtor that had tried to list it back in 2013. The Google Street View actually had a sign in the yard, and I was able to make out the number. I called him. He remembered the house and everything.
Wow.
He drove by and took pictures of the outside of the house. It looked just the same as it did in 2013, which means they've been keeping it up, maintained. There's no reason that
anything's changed.
Suspect the inside has been not taken care of. It probably has plenty of wear and tear, but for us, we just do a discount for what we're willing to do. We get the BPO's broker price opinion of the property, and then we discount that for what to allow some spread if they're wrong. Most of the time we found they're off a good bit, but I just sit there and look at it, and try to balance what people say it's worth with what can realistically be expected. And over the past couple of years with COVID, and even right before COVID, prices of non-performing notes were going up, and people were overpaying and compared to what we would. And you just sometimes have to let people do that. You keep looking, and you'll find deals that other people overlook. And those have been where our best money has been made. It's not the common, if it's $150,000 house, you pay 65% of UPB, and as long as they have equity above UPB, a lot of people are taught to make their bids based off that, but they don't know how to run the different scenarios for potential exits. And that right there is where the best money we've made off notes has been on a per asset basis.
And I think it's part of a progression, because you get people that are interested in notes that it may be their first taste of real estate. And if that's the case and you're trying to teach that person, you got to start somewhere. So you have to give one of those formulas that says, 80% UPB or blah, blah, blah. And you base it off of hard numbers that person can go get. The ARV maybe from a realtor, the legal balance, the UPB, things like that. But once you learn, or if you already know about real estate and you can start analyzing it better, then you just improve your formula every time you look at it. So like he was saying, when we go through, there's two stages. We analyze the person and we analyze the house. And so when you start looking at the house, we use Google Street View a lot. We will look at every picture that they have on the timeline. And so you can see, did a window get broken? Did a tree die? Are they keeping the yard mowed? Does there look like there's a tarp on the roof? Did it go away, or is it still there? And so you can start building this like story of what happened to the house. Okay, we have this person, maybe they got older, maybe a spouse died, and then they were the one that used to take care of the house, and now it's getting more dilapidated. You start building these stories about what happened, and it makes it more understandable for you to gauge the house. So when you do finally get those new images, if you get to the point of ordering someone to go buy the house, you get fresh images and can start looking at it and saying, okay, I see a tarp on the roof. That's going to be, $2,000 to patch that hole. And I see some broken windows. I bet there's water damage under that. That's going to be another $1,000, whatever it is in your market. And you start, once you learn more about houses in general, you can actually do a good budget. And before you even buy the note, you have a piece of paper that says, okay, if I took that house tomorrow, here's my repair list. And you have it all budgeted out.
Yeah.
Well, the other question I had for you is, you started rehabbing to begin with, and then you got into the notes. I mean, was there more of a group, or how did you get your formal education on the notes, or, kind of getting the feel for how they operate?
It was a mastermind that we were in with Phil and Melanie, was one of them, and then networking.
Okay.
We get something, a house or a note we bought in North Carolina. We had a friend from a different group that lived 45 minutes from there, and he's the closest person we knew to Winston-Salem, where this property was. I call him. He says, well, I don't flip there. I don't know the market extremely well, but I have a friend that lives over there, and I can call him to go to drive by and take pictures. Well, the guy that he called took pictures through the windows because it was vacant. The house was kept up great, and it was a 300,000 ARV, about 220,000 as is value, and because we were just talking with our network, that guy that we called, he actually funded the deal for us, and we did the deal in our retirement account. And I didn't call him to fund it. He just was like, "Here, tell me more about that." And then the next day he called and said, "I'll fund that for you so you can do it in your retirement account." I'm like, "Well, okay, we were just going to buy it ourselves." And your network is extremely important. That's especially if you're doing something outside of your backyard. But
we use that all the time to back into our numbers, because we don't know about any of the markets that we buy our notes in hardly, but we always have people there. And so when we do go to buy a note in a new market or even a new area of town, because some cities can vary by street, we call our boots on the ground, which are flippers, because if we take the house back, who are we going to sell it to? We're going to sell it to a flipper to fix it up and sell it again. And so we say, hey, well, what would you pay for this house? We know what they want to buy it for, and we can back into what it would cost us to liquidate it.
And that's the key for us. When we buy a note, we want to be able to sell it to a flipper at a wholesale rate and not be forced to try to manage the repairs ourselves at a distance. Now, depending on the situation, we may, but we don't want to be forced to. And that's one of our criteria, or our pricing criteria, is we try to put enough on a non-performing note. We try to put enough spread in it that if we sold it to you, if you flipped houses, you'd be willing to pay us at least what we have in it, if not make a nice little profit ourselves for the amount of time we hold it.
Okay, no, I appreciate it.
That's the key, leaving enough meat on the bone for the next stage of investing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, as you're doing notes, you learn more and more about different areas you want to keep on investing in. And then also you can learn how to dial the numbers. Like the one that Mel mentioned in Indiana, that one in particular, now we know what the environment's like, what the court system's like. We're going to have to pay even less for notes in that area than we did, just because we now know that the court system is very
Borrower
friendly, and they will drag things out.
And just as I just remembered this note in Osgood, Indiana. It's an hour and a half, I think, south of Indianapolis. We paid something like $12,500 for the CFD. We got the people to sign a cancellation of contract. The house next door had just been flipped and put on the market for $300,000. A gorgeous Victorian style house. The house that we bought was really worn down, and a realtor, I forgot what the BPO came in at, something like 70,000. After we get into it, it needed $150,000 in repair.
So I'll interject on that part. Dealing with professionals and how do you get your numbers? Because you can't go in and inspect the inside of homes. On this particular one, we had a realtor go do a BPO. They returned it. We're like, great, that's a reasonable number. Okay. And then once we got in there and realized how bad the numbers were, we called the realtor back. We're like, what were you thinking? What, this is way off. And they're like, oh, well, even though there was a busted basement window that was letting critters and water and whatever else in, and there were a couple other broken windows, and the paint was completely peeling on the outside, even though we saw and took pictures of all that, we just assumed the inside was good.
Yeah.
Come on now.
The inside is not any better than the outside,
Yeah.
Now
typically.
the kicker to this whole story was we sold it to someone that paid to scrape the lot. And they paid $22,000 for it. And we almost donated it to the Indiana Historical Society. They were gonna put something like $80,000 into repairing it, getting it paint ready and stuff, and then let someone else buy it and do the finish. But and then after we paid the commission, we made like $1,200 on the deal, and they literally paid to scrape it. And it happened to be a trust that a couple that lived there left to the city that had like $25 million in it. And it was to keep Osgood beautiful. And they paid us to scrape it, which cost them another probably $6,000, I'd guess, but.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the importance of having that meat on the bone, the one in Indiana, it's actually near Terre Haute called Prairieton. We had
This is the one that the video is previewing right now. You could go to YouTube and watch it at 10 minutes if we get bored. Have all the dirt on it.
Yeah, but we were able to purchase it at a low enough price that when things blew up, we were still able to protect our investor. And we did make a profit, not much, given that we held it for almost 3 years. But that meat on the bone makes a difference. If you don't, and we had, it was one of our worst cases was, hey, if we have to take it back, what could happen, et cetera. And having run that
Those
case,
numbers, yeah.
that worst case actually came true.
Yeah.
And so we were able to still get through.
So Phil has a calculator that he will run different scenarios out on each on the asset. What if it goes to foreclosure? What if it is a fix and flip? What if it's you sell it to a rehabber? What if it turns into a rental? I mean,
And you'll find as you create your own calculator, you'll tweak it up based on your own experiences.
right. And nobody has mentioned legal costs. So legal costs and legal fees and holding timelines may be extended now with the moratorium. So a lot of the courts are backed up. I know just last time we checked with Detroit, it was like 18 months or something.
Well, hold on, it's not just Detroit City. I mean, we're talking about
Wayne.
Wayne County, which covers way more than Detroit.
Yeah,
And in this entire area, the assumption is it's all about 18 months. So if you put something in now, you're not going to get a foreclosure until after next year.
they are doing more things virtually, so I think that's probably saving them, but they're never that organized over here.
Yeah, usually it goes through much quicker though. But it is something that you'd want to
The legal timeline.
allocate money to.
The amount of money we paid for the note was almost equal to the amount of money we paid for holding and workout.
Yeah.
So the workout, part of the workout was we had to have a settlement with the borrower. And so because they had, it wasn't the borrower, it was the tenant, because there was title issues. But what happened was we had, because there was equity in the home and that tenant had actually, the replace the roof or replace the furnace and the roof or something. The judge did not want to settle in court. He made us do a settlement outside of court. So we had to come up with a whole, negotiation strategy. So you just have to be prepared for everything. Now, I think, the exit that's happening right now, that's probably a great story, was this Georgia one. And we had it small. We were told it was a 3-1. We got inside the house. It was a 1-1. I'm like, they had mixed up the court records with the mother's house next door. So it was the mother and the son, and they had swapped the description of the property. I mean, it was like, okay. So then we get this property back. We tried to sell it as is, and they would get to the final point and they would do like an inspection, and the lady finally sent me a picture. She's like, listen, the plumbing is coming out of the beautiful clawfoot tub down into underneath the house, and it was held up by a rock, the pipe. Okay, a little bit of redneck there. Then what happened was we fixed the plumbing and we redid the bathroom. So it was my distance rehab. And actually my investor was a flipper. So I said, well, do you want to run this? You want to run this little rehab here that we do? And as soon as we finished that, we had an investor, a flipper, a real flipper wanting to buy the house. So we created a note for this guy, and you don't have to originate, use an RMLO when it's an investor. So it was a short-term thing, and he actually contacted me this week, and he painted it, did the floors, new kitchen facelift. He's selling it for
20,000 profit.
20,000 profit.
Awesome.
After all the costs that
He put in, yeah. So it was good for him, and he just had a baby, and he's really friendly with me, and he's so happy that you help the community. It's just like you want to look for all the wins, and that another one the city actually called me up in this Wyoming, Illinois, and said, I just want to thank you, because now we actually have a nice neighbor who's taking care of the house now. And I'm really glad, you sold it to the right person.
Oh, wow.
So people, it makes a difference, sometimes these exits really make the difference. So
that's key on the non-performing. A lot of people buy the performing notes, and I've had 5 different people tell me they've bought a note as performing, and month 1 they stop paying, and they don't know how to. A lot of people learn how to buy performing notes, but they have no idea on the non-performing side of things, and the people they're learning from, I don't think, teach them well enough to at least consider what it might take. And that's why we were fortunate in deciding to learn the non-performing space first. Just because we can, I think, better assess the risk to the note. We've bought performing paper at 93 cents on the dollar. I bought a non-performing note in North Carolina, that one I was talking about earlier, for 90 cents on the dollar of UPB.
See,
We made a 50% profit on it in 6 months, but it was because the legal balance was higher, and it became a lot easier when someone bought it at the foreclosure sale when the second position sold it, and they paid $200,000 for it at the auction for a second.
That's a good lesson in itself for anyone who is looking at getting into notes, to clearly understand the first versus second versus third, and what the legal implications are of that. There's different levels of notes, and they're subordinate to each other. And in this case, another investor made a terrible mistake when he was buying this note at auction. And it was at auction, so it was kind of a faster pace decision.
He didn't run a title report to make sure who was foreclosing, what position they were in. And one thing on this one that I learned, a second position lien holder does not have to support, the money that comes in doesn't automatically go to the first position. I thought if a second position foreclosed, the money they got would have to go to the first position, then them. But they foreclosed right before we were going to, the month before, and we knew they were there. But there was 100,000 of excess, or 60,000 of excess that they couldn't keep, that we could have filed a claim for if we wanted to. But when that investor came to us saying, hey, I bought the second on this, I thought it was a first. I need to see what you'll do to release your lien on this house. And we ended up selling him the note, and it was at a reducing his loss price, because if we would have went to foreclosure, I would assume it would sell for about that $200,000 price. ARV on the house was 300,000, and he paid 200. So if he couldn't afford to buy it back, or even if he did, he'd have 400,000 in it.
Right.
We sold it to him for 95,000, and he could release the lien. We made 3,000 more than the total payoff balance, but
You made money, you made pretty good money in a short amount of time.
yeah, we paid 63,000 for the note, had 700 in legal cost, and that was pretty much it.
Nice.
Yeah. One thing that was very important that Levi mentioned is there's an unpaid balance, but there can also be fees due to lateness, due to non-payment, et cetera, that can stack up
Taxes.
above and beyond the unpaid balance. So I believe that's what Levi was counting on.
Was the legal
There
balance.
was, he paid off of UPB, but there was an excess of other charges that he could have rolled in.
And the biggest portion in this particular deal was, it was a $220,000 house that we were paying $63,000 for the note. The legal balance is blue sky.
Right.
And so a lot of people will say, oh, well, buy it because they owe $200,000. No, their principal balance is 70,000. We paid 63. I'm gonna assume that we may have to give up some of that legal balance. It may be on there incorrectly. We may not actually be able to get some of that legal balance back, depending on if it's legal fees, tax advancements, or whatever. Some of it may be uncollectible, but this one, it was a $220,000 house. We were investing 63. There's plenty of spread in there to make mistakes.
Right.
Wow.
Okay. Hey, we're almost 8:30 right now. So Michael, do you have any final questions?
Well, I mean, I could talk your ear off if you want to hear them, but no. I did have one. I mean, I'm guessing that you're probably developing some type of checklist, because I've owned rental units, and one of the things about getting into notes that, developing a little bit of a research ability seems like, because determining where your liens are at and any taxes and who they're paying on taxes, is that something you guys research? Because if you get a situation where, you know, Johnny over here owns the house and he's behind on his taxes, but Bob from some other place pays him and you're unaware of that, you know, if you developing some type of research, you know, to kind of determine how those taxes are paid and where those liens are coming from.
We don't care if necessarily if Bob paid the taxes on Johnny's house, unless he bought the tax lien.
Right.
So in states where they do the tax lien sales or the tax deed sales, we definitely check that aspect of it. But we call the counties to check to see if they're delinquent, if there's a payment plan, are they making payments according to it. We try to get as much information as we can. Sometimes they'll tell us, sometimes they won't. We'll call some of the utility companies to try to see if utilities are still on. Power, water, a lot of times they can't tell you what the balance is, but you can usually get, well, we just want to see if they're connected and being used.
And as far as keeping up with the taxes and the utilities, that is something that it's very location specific, and it's very you and your system specific too. Because whatever you do, if it's writing it on a notepad, if it's putting in an Excel spreadsheet, if you've got an employee or an assistant that calls every month and checks on things, that it has to fit your system so that you're consistent with it. One thing that we ran into in the past, here in Texas, we pay taxes once a year, and that's all we have to worry about it. In other areas of the country, they'll charge 2, 3, or 4 times a year that they collect taxes. And so in Mississippi, I believe they do quarterly, either maybe twice a year. I think it's twice a year. So we bought the note, the taxes were paid, everything was good. Then we didn't mess with it because it was being escrowed, and we overlooked or assumed that we would get a notice when it was time to pay the taxes. And we didn't think about it because we pay once a year. And so we were looking for once a year taxes. If we knew they paid in January, we're like, okay, next January we'll have taxes due again. And because we didn't, it was a CFD.
Mississippi's a mortgage, but what ended up happening, they sold the tax lien and we had to buy it back. So whoever bought it made their 8 to 12%, depending on what they actually paid for it. It cost us $400. And this one was done with our money. There was no other investor in it. And just because of the area it was in, and the network we had, we were like, well, we'll buy it. We'll see how our network performs in it. It wasn't the best of investments, but yeah, it went to tax sale. We had to buy it back. And that one taught us a lot as far as.
And the big thing for us on this one, the reason we didn't get notified and we weren't looking was because when we bought the note, we should have contacted the county and told them, hey, we're the new lien holder. Here's our address. And we didn't do that. And so if
you record it, doesn't that happen when you like record the note?
It does, but it didn't get picked up in their system.
Okay.
Not every county checks that.
Okay.
So some counties, when you record a document, the systems talk. In this particular county, the systems do not talk. So you have to manually call and tell them to change the address.
So that's why we have a property affidavit. Michael, it's called the property transfer affidavit that has to be filled out every single property that's bought or sold in Michigan, so they actually can send the tax documents to the correct place.
Okay,
That's
no, I
something
appreciate,
Michigan specific, property transfer affidavit. So, but next month, Michael, you might want to jump in. We're having Dan Deppen speak. And Dan actually has created almost like he has tons of online training, but he has a little training course on like how to do the due diligence.
Alright.
So
no, that'd be great.
that's very practical. Dan is an engineer. He's super systematic. Yeah, so he'll be just doing case studies next month, but he'll show some stuff. So we have
That's
that this month and
Yeah.
Just
Just
October what?
the
second,
second Monday of October.
I think 8. Let's look what it is.
Let's see. October
11th.
11th.
October, Columbus Day. And Jenny and Levi, could you please pull up your website, or maybe Phil could pull it up real quick for your contact information? What would be easier? You do it or
Have it.
no?
So you can either go to our website, Note
Type it in
Rehabbers.
maybe into the notes, and then at Jay, you can pull it up. Noterehabber.com.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have it here. My mistake.
Yeah, it's in the chat now. And our contact information's at the bottom. And yeah, anyone, y'all are welcome to call us anytime. Phil and Melanie, y'all have our cell phone number, so
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
y'all know y'all are can get a hold of us. So
Right.
Okay. In that case, any last words from anyone?
No, thanks, Michael, for being here. I appreciate it. And
No,
if you
you know
have
what?
any questions, Michael, just contact us. If you head over to YouTube and look up Phil and Mel Jacob,
yeah,
that's one request I have, is if you could like our channel, because we don't have a channel, but if you like one of our videos or something, then we can have a channel. Trying to do some more case studies and share some of the things that we've done. We have a couple examples of different notes that we've done there. So
no, I really appreciate the conversation, the dialogue going back and forth. It's really valuable. I really do appreciate it.
great. Thanks for being here. And Jenny and Levi, thank you
Yeah, thank you.
for joining us. And good luck with the next step, whatever that looks like. I know Phil and I are trying to diversify into multifamily a little bit, and I know you guys are looking for some other deals. So keep us posted, and we'll have you back.
all right, that sounds good. And Michael, feel free to reach out if you would like us to look at anything you're analyzing. We like to help people just spot the different things that they need to look for.
No, I did pull up your website there, so it's good. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, you
Thank you.
guys.